We are Haley and Cooper, and last year we bought a 1997 Winnebago to travel the United States. After 6 months of needed updates and fixes, we officially set off on our journey. We are currently headed out west and will be documenting our adventure here. Be sure to follow along to see where our journey takes us.
It has already been 6 weeks of RV life, and Sunday started out in the parking lot of a military vehicle museum.
We started at the National Museum of Military Vehicles, which we mentioned in our last video we were spending the night at on Saturday. So Sunday we woke up, we'd already kind of explored the outdoor area, and we went into the actual museum itself, which we weren't really expecting much. I guess we didn't really know what to expect. We'd heard a little bit that it was really great. We heard it was really big. Both were in fact the case. It was really great and it was enormous. So we're kind of expecting we're just going to spend a couple hours here, and then we're trying to get on the road because we're headed to the Grand Tetons next. Ended up spending 6 hours there. And we didn't even see all of it. We probably saw about 90%. So it was actually really amazing.
Yeah, it opened up at 10 o'clock. So we got there right at 10, hoping we could be there for an hour or two, see if we wanted to see it, and then head out. But there was a tour at 10:30. So we stayed for the tour. And the tour started out going over just World War II vehicles and information, which was extremely fascinating.
Yeah, great tour. Definitely recommend. I mean, it's free with the actual tickets for the place. So if you're there during a tour time, you should totally go. He told us more than we could ever possibly have known on our own. We were at the tour for 2 hours. Again, that was just for World War II. They had a smaller section beforehand that covered the Revolutionary War. They had firearms from the actual Revolutionary War, which I thought was really amazing. Then they had things from World War One, and then obviously a lot more vehicles whenever they're talking about World War II, and then later on they had some things for Vietnam and Korea as well. So just a really, really big place, enormous, definitely worth going, definitely recommend.
Mm-hmm. And from there, like I said, we ended up leaving a lot later than we were expecting, so left probably around 3-4 o'clock, which for a couple hour drive over to the Grand Tetons, which neither of us have been to before, so we were very excited, and pulled up, and it was absolutely stunning right from the start.
Yes, we are in the Tetons now. We're absolutely loving our adventure here. It is beautiful. So we're driving through this pass that winds from Du Bois to the Tetons itself, and all of a sudden you come around this corner and you just see them rising up. It was our first experience with mountains this high, really. Definitely on this trip.
Mm-hmm. What's really cool about it is there are no foothills or anything, so it's in the area called Jackson Hole, which is just basically a wide valley between mountains. So it was super flat, and then it just goes up. All of a sudden, the mountains are right there. So it looks like the mountains just shoot right out of the ground, and there's no foothills, so you see how big the mountains really are from top to bottom.
Yeah, so we are loving our time there. Obviously, Sunday was kind of our first experience of getting a chance to see those. So on Monday after work, we headed to the visitor center just to kind of get our lay of the land, figure out where everything is, because this is a much bigger park than we have been at up to this point. So we were doing that, and on our way back, we got to see our first moose sighting, which was great, and we weren't really expecting to see very much moose, and moose have kind of been following us around a little bit, so we've seen a lot more as we gone. But we saw our first moose that night, and then we also went to an event called the Hootenanny, which is at Dornan's, and this is a little restaurant slash convenience area pretty close to the airport, about smack in the middle of the park. And they have something called a Hootenanny every Monday, so it's this free event where you can go, you can order food, you can have drinks, things like that, but otherwise you can just sit for free and listen to the music. So they have all these different local artists or people who are just in town will play 2 songs and they'll move on to the next person, which is really neat because you get to hear different genres, different people's voices, and they're all very talented. So we really enjoyed that. We are going to go again this week as well.
Definitely recommend if you're in the area, if you have the time. 100% worth it. Then on Tuesday, we decided to do the Grand Teton Loop. So we actually have this cool app called Shaka Guides, and it's a driving audio tour. So it tracks your GPS location, and as you go around the route, it will read you information every couple miles or every couple minutes based off of where you're at.
Yeah, it's been really fun. So we did that throughout this overall loop of the Grand Tetons. You don't get to see everything, but you get to see most everything. They tell you information about different things you're passing, where you should go, what overlooks are worth stopping at versus which ones are really cool but a little bit less interesting, or maybe have a little bit less history to them. And they also give you turn-by-turn directions. So this isn't necessarily a plug, but we really enjoyed them, and we did that on Tuesday. So we got to see a lot of the park, which was really awesome. We definitely recommended that as far as getting a good sampling of most things that were going on. So we went to the Menors Ferry area, got to see the Chapel of the Transfiguration, which is really popular. I think it's an Episcopalian chapel because it's got these clear glass windows so you can see the Grand Tetons behind, and we saw some animals over there.
Yeah, we saw a moose, which when you're not in a car and you see a moose, kind of off the path, kind of not. It's a little scary because moose tend to be pretty aggressive and territorial towards their young, and this moose did have a baby moose with it. So we were like, oh my gosh, it is a mama moose,
Yeah.
and we are probably within striking range of it charging. So it was a little nerve wracking, but didn't even look at us. Just kind of kept walking.
Right.
We've learned over the past week that moose are pretty chill if you respect their area and you don't sneak up on them.
And if they're not with a baby, they tend to be a lot more calm. So we got to do that, and then we also went up to Signal Mountain. So this is just past Jenny Lake. We decided to save Jenny Lake for a different time. So if you're a Grand Teton fan, you've probably been there. Who read that in the future? But we went to Signal Mountain, which was really awesome. It's a beautiful drive up this smaller mountain in the area in comparison to the Tetons themselves. We got to see some really excellent wildlife up there as well.
We even saw a small fox, which is super rare to see a fox, and this fox was multicolored. It was a red fox, we're assuming, but it was red, black, white, gray. Very cool.
Yeah, he was really neat. And over off in the distance, you could see all these elk kind of at this feeding pond, various other things there, moose, pronghorn, stuff like that. So that was really neat. That was all very far away. We have not yet invested in binoculars, which we're realizing is a fault on our part. So we were graciously borrowing those of strangers. But definitely a really cool mountain drive. I think you can hike up it, but we just drove and it was definitely worth it.
Mm-hmm. And on our way back, now Signal Mountain is probably a solid 40 minutes to an hour drive away from our campsite, and it's on the opposite side of the loop. So we decided to just complete the loop and come back down. And on that main road, we saw someone pulled over. This is kind of towards dusk. It's getting a little darker out. And someone pulled over, so we pulled over in front of them because whenever someone pulls over, chances are there's a wildlife or something there to see. And there had to be 20 plus elk just right next to the road.
Yeah, just grazing. It was really cool. Most of them were male. I think all of them pretty young, based off the size of their antlers, but it was really cool just to see them all hanging out right next to us on the road. So we sat there for a while and watched them. And that was what we did on Tuesday. On Wednesday, we just kind of hung out in our general area. We walked around our campsite and just sort of explored here, but also had another chill night in. So Wednesday wasn't super exciting, but Thursday we went to Taggart Lake, which is another really popular lake in the area, and we did the Taggart Lake Trail, which takes you out to the lake itself and back.
Taggart Lake is very cool. It's probably the less popular cousin of Jenny Lake.
Yeah, but still very popular.
If you have time, definitely go do it. We did this in the evening. We have also learned from the park ranger that if you're going to go do anything, do it really early in the morning because everyone gets out around 9, 10 o'clock, and then there's just no parking anywhere. But we are working during the day, so we went out, probably got out there around 7-ish, 6:37, and the parking lot was pretty empty. There wasn't a ton of people there. Had no issue with parking. Got in there, pulled up. This was our first legit hike in bear country where they have signs and everyone's telling you to bring bear spray. So we were a little more on edge than normal. We had our bear spray ready and we were prepared to use it at any cost.
On our route, we kind of came across these people who were like, just so you know, there's a moose around the corner. And like, this was our first, like I said, we had seen the one moose from our car. We had seen the other moose on accident. This was our first, like, oh, there's a moose around the corner. So we're like walking, we're like, oh gosh, okay. And we get really nervous. And then we get up and around the corner and it's just like young adolescent moose, like just munching on this bush next to the path. I mean, probably 20 some odd feet from us, relatively close. But he really didn't care about us at all. So
didn't pick his head up once. Yeah,
he just kind of like eyed us a little bit like, I wonder what they're up to, and then just kept eating. So that was interesting. Different kind of a moose encounter than we were expecting. Like we said, we're not saying that you should pet them. We're not saying that you should not take them seriously, but we are saying that we kind of had this image of like every moose will charge you, and it was that we've learned is not the case. So we see this moose on the way out there. We walked to Taggart Lake. At this point, it's probably like 7:30. It's a relatively easy hike. Definitely recommend. We get to the lake and we decided we wanted to go swimming. So we jump in, and by that I mean we wade slowly into the 60-degree water.
Yeah, it's Taggart Lake is it's a higher elevation than the road. So it's a pretty gradual walk to get up there, but it's like a mountain lake. Like there are mountains at the bottom of the lake or at the edge of the lake in the distance, and it is like a glacial water fed lake. Very cold. I said
cold.
We were a little warm when we got there. We put our feet in and we were cold instantly. It was cold.
I did not end up all the way in. I got about halfway. Cooper eventually decided to brave it and went all the way in, but I was not feeling it that night. It was like, I mean, the sun's going down, so it's already getting a little chillier, and the lake is frigid. So we hung out there for a little while, and it was really beautiful. We basically had the place to ourselves. There was one other couple there, but other than that, it was so nice to just be in this like beautiful mountains rising up behind you, lake all in front kind of area.
Mm-hmm.
So we hung out and did that and then made our way back. So on our way back, we're like watching out for our little moose friend, and we didn't see him. We're like, oh, there he is in the distance. And we get a little closer and we're like, wow, I feel like he's gotten a little bigger. Like maybe he was just on this hill at this point, this particular moose was. So we're like, oh, okay. And then we like see this baby come like running out and we're like, that's not our little adolescent moose. That's Mama Moose. So Mama Moose is like probably 100 feet away. So way farther than the other moose was. And at first she didn't see us and so she was fine. And we're like, you're supposed to make noise just so you don't startle them. So we are. So baby moose is like watching us and Mama Moose is just like chilling, and all of a sudden she sees us and she's like eyeing us. So I mean, she never really moved from her spot, but again, we were like probably 80 feet farther away from her than the other moose, and she was watching us the whole time. So definitely a lot more reason for caution around ones with babies. So that was really cool to get to see the baby and to get to see her, but a little bit more nerve-wracking than this other like teenage moose who's just hanging out.
Yeah, and that pretty much was all we did. Thursday was go to Tiger Lake. Very cool. Definitely worth it if you're in the area, if you have time. Really cool. And then Friday was another slower day. We explored Jackson. We went out Friday night. It was very hot on Friday. We were going to go do maybe a hike, but it was a little warmer than we were hoping it to be. Didn't want to be out again in the hotness. So we decided to just walk through Jackson. It's a very cool town. Lots of things happening. People everywhere, restaurants everywhere, little stores, gift shops. Very cool. So we went out there around 8 o'clock and walked around for a couple hours, got ice cream, went through the park, saw the famous arches, which of course you have to get a picture in front of.
Which we, funny enough, have not yet. But yeah, that was the thing. So we've been driving back and forth from Jackson every day. It's about 20 minutes from where we're staying, mostly just to go work in the library and kind of mix up our area. So we were a little bit familiar with how the town worked. We had been very startled whenever we drove in for the first time on Monday, just how crowded it was. This is by far the most touristy area we've been in. Custer was kind of touristy as well, don't get me wrong, but this like sort of blew us out of the water. So that sort of took us aback, but at this point it's Friday and we're a little more adjusted and we get the idea of what it's going to be. So this was our first time actually walking around other than at the library, and got to explore some of the shops that were still open, and like you said, got some ice cream and things like that. So that was Friday.
And then on Saturday, we had a little more time because we're not working during the day. So we decided to do a longer drive than what we normally did. So we went out to Coulter Bay Village, which is an hour-ish drive north. And we went out there because there are great lakes, great hiking, and other outdoor activities you can do in the area.
So we went up there to go to the Lakeshore Trail, which was really fun. It's this little figure-8 loop around one of the peninsulas that goes out into the middle of Jackson Lake. So we went to do that. We talked to the ranger beforehand, which was really helpful because we were actually going to go on a different hike, and he mentioned that that one's closed. We discovered also always talk to the rangers because they have information, and he said that he recommended we bring our swimsuits out to that one because he figured that the actual swimming beach would be packed, which it was whenever we walked by later. So we got ourselves changed, walked out to the end of the Lakeshore Trail, and really just enjoyed this beautiful spot at the end of this peninsula in the middle of the lake. There was nobody around. Got this excellent view of the Tetons. Definitely recommend that. And we got fully in this time. It was a little bit warmer than the other day, so we actually spent some time just soaking and hanging out here. It was beautiful.
Yeah, and there were a lot more water access points.
Yes.
Than there were at Taggart Lake. So we went out and there was someone at one of those spots, and we kept going, and there had to be 10 more spots around the little loop that you could have gone that there was no one at.
Right.
So we went in, put ourselves on the little rocky beach. It was super great. There was kayakers that went by. The water was a good temperature. There are people in like speedboats and jet skis I'm sure you can rent in the area or bring your own. I think so just be aware that it is a little more popular of a lake to go do like recreational activities on. But definitely recommend swimming in it. It's a lot warmer than the other mountain lakes.
It could have been the time of day, but it did feel warmer than our trip in Taggart Lake for sure. And then after that, we packed ourselves up the second half of the Lakeshore Trail, which we definitely recommend. It was, I think I mentioned before, it was about 2 miles in total, so relatively manageable, very level hike in general. And then after that, we drove to the Jackson Lodge because we heard that was really cool. It was really cool. I think it would have been cooler if we were sitting and eating. There's 3 different restaurants in there, all different price points, so definitely recommend checking those out if you are interested. It has this really beautiful view of Mount Moran and some of the other Tetons all around, but we just kind of walked in, looked, checked out the gift shop, and then left.
You can stay at Jackson Lodge. There are multiple little huts, campgrounds, everything like that you can stay at, which would be really cool. We didn't because we're staying over near Jackson.
In our RV.
In our RV.
And that is what we've been up to this week. So that was week 6. Thanks so much for watching. Follow along, and we will send over week 7.